Well, candidates in the South Australian state election will spend the day delivering their last pitches to voters before they head to the polls tomorrow. Early polling is favouring South Australia's incumbent Labor Party, but Premier Peter Malinascus isn't getting ahead of himself.
Success breeds complacency. Complacency leads to defeat. Only the paranoid survive. I think it was Andy Groves from this. So we're going to have some intel.
So paranoia is going to drive you to 40 seats out of 47?
No. Just a healthy degree of paranoia. Just to actually be conscious of the world that we live in and the volatility that exists in our world, in our community, and that can play itself at the ballot box. So you have to have a serious plan for the future of the state. There's a lot going right here, but there are challenges too. And our approach is to be candid about that and have a serious policy, particularly on matters such as housing and cost of living.
Ashton Hearn became the leader of the state's Liberal Party in December following Vincent Tarzia's departure after just 15 months in the role. The Libs have been polling poorly, both federally and in South Australia, but Ashton Hearn says she's focused on delivering for South Australians.
I'm just focused on what the Liberal Party can do to really hit the issues that South Australians are wanting to speak to me about. That's all about affordability, about people being able to get their foot into the housing market, and also on addressing the health system here in the state. So that's been my focus. It's so easy to allow yourself to be distracted by the polls, but I'm not a navel-gazing type politician. You've got to keep focused on what you can control, and for me that's just about getting back to those bread and butter issues.
For more now on the South Australian election tomorrow, we're joined from Adelaide by the ABC's Chief Elections and Data Analyst, Casey Briggs. A very good morning to you, Casey. Now, Labor is expected to win. Do you get any sense of the scale of the victory that we might see?
Yeah, morning, Kath. Look, I'm not usually one that likes to make predictions about elections before we start to see figures roll in, but when the polls look the way they do, when you really can't find anyone that's going to predict a Liberal government next week, it's pretty clear that Labor is on track for victory, and it seems like they're on track for an increased majority in the House of Assembly as well. Now, the scale of the victory is a little bit harder to pick, but the polls are pointing toward a victory on par, roughly, with the biggest victory in South Australian history, when the Arnold Labor government was defeated, was wiped out after the collapse of the State Bank in 1993. That is the most lopsided election in South Australian history. What it seems like we're looking at tomorrow night is a result that might be of a similar sort of magnitude, but of course we'll find out the exact numbers and the exact number of seats that Labor win tomorrow night. Can they pick up seats in Adelaide, where they're breathing down the necks of the Liberal Party in a number of marginal seats, especially some marginal seats where retiring Liberal MPs are leaving that party without the advantage of incumbency? And if they do, will they really come to dominate suburban Adelaide in the same way that they did in the federal election last year? Can Labor really take over the centre of the city?
Now, Casey, I want to ask you about One Nation and the challenge that party is proving in this contest between the Liberal Party and that party. Can it win any seats?
Yeah, it's the undercard fight that's actually attracting around the country more attention. In many ways, it's felt like Pauline Hanson is one of the main characters in this election, despite the fact that she is a Queenslander. She's not actually running in this election, but has been campaigning here all of this week. Polls are suggesting that One Nation will win more primary votes statewide than the Liberal Party. They could become the second biggest party in terms of vote share after this election. Now, there's been a lot of polls. There's been a lot of national polls. We've seen a big surge in One Nation's support. Tomorrow, we find out how accurate they are. Tomorrow, we get some actual data in 47 districts to know, will One Nation perform as well as polls are suggesting? And the answer to that question is going to have significant national implications for all governments and all political parties around the country. Then the next question is, if they do reach that sort of level of support, if they are beating the Liberal Party on statewide primaries, can they win seats? And that is a much harder proposition for them because of the nature of the sort of electoral geography. The seats they are maybe most likely to perform most strongly in are complicated with independents running, incumbent independents, or independents trying to enter the parliament. That is a complicating factor. The seats that One Nation might do very well in Adelaide are complicated by the fact that, well, they tend to be very safe Labor seats, so it'll be very hard for One Nation to win. So it could actually be the case tomorrow night that we're looking at One Nation with a very high primary vote, maybe a primary vote higher than the Liberal Party, but fewer seats in the Liberal Party, maybe even 0 or 1, that kind of a number. So a very interesting result to watch, and there's going to be a lot of interesting patterns that we're looking for clues in.
Casey, you touched on those national implications that we've seen the federal Liberal Party hemorrhaging voters across to One Nation. In more detail, what are the possible national implications of this election?
Yeah, so is that hemorrhaging we're seeing in One Nation polling, is it real? Do people, when they actually get into the ballot box and they see the names on the ballot in front of them, will they follow through and vote for One Nation? We've seen in the past One Nation have underperformed polling numbers. Will that be the case this time? So that's question number one. We'll get a real, firm data point. The only poll that matters, as they say, is on election day. That's question number one. Then what are the implications for those results and the pattern of One Nation support across South Australia? Are they doing well in the city? Are they doing better in the city than they used to? That will matter deeply, both in terms of the Farrer by-election that's happening in early May in the New South Wales, in sort of southwestern New South Wales, the seat vacated by former Liberal leader Susan Lee. It's a very interesting seat, and it takes in Albury, but it also takes in a lot of remote and regional areas. We'll be watching, a lot of eyes are on that one, and this will be an important clue toward that election. But also, there's a Victorian state election, a general election happening at the end of the year that looks a little bit more competitive than this one, and One Nation has the potential to be a pretty disruptive force in that election. The New South Wales election in a year's time. So there's a lot of elections coming down the road that could well be are shaping up to be more competitive than this one on a sort of formation of government level. But this one will present a lot of clues, and I suspect parties will be adapting their messaging and their strategies after they see the result tomorrow night.
Casey Briggs, we'll let you get back to it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kath.